I'm Rebecca Miller, 27, and until last year, I was the heir to Miller's Fine Dining, my family's pride in Chicago. Growing up, I breathed kitchen air more than playground dust. My parents promised me the restaurant would be mine someday. Then came that voicemail. "You've betrayed this family. You're out of the business." My crime? A misunderstanding and my one-word response. Understood. That single word cost me my inheritance and my family. Before I share how my parents destroyed our relationship over a misunderstanding, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe to hear more stories about family betrayals that ultimately lead to personal growth. My earliest memories aren't of playground slides or birthday parties. They're of standing on a step stool at age 5, watching my father, Robert Miller, knead dough for the fresh bread we served every night. I remember my mother, Diana, greeting guests by name, her perfume mingling with the aroma of garlic and herbs as she moved gracefully between tables. Miller's Fine Dining wasn't just a restaurant, it was our family's heartbeat. The restaurant runs deep in our blood. My grandfather started with a small diner on Chicago's North Side in the 1960s. He was a talented chef who escaped hardship in Italy and brought his family recipes to America. That tiny diner barely seated 20 people, but his food drew lines around the block. My father worked there from age 12, learning everything from dishwashing to dessert preparation. When my parents married, they had a vision to elevate my grandfather's legacy. They saved every penny, took out loans that terrified them, and opened Miller's Fine Dining in a better location. They transformed the casual family recipes into sophisticated cuisine while maintaining the soul that made people fall in love with my grandfather's cooking. I was born into this legacy. While other kids had playrooms, I had a corner of the restaurant office with coloring books and toy cooking sets. The staff became my extended family. Angelo, our head chef for 15 years, would sneak me tastes of chocolate mousse. Maria, our longest-serving waitress, taught me to fold napkins into swans when I was 7. My natural talent for cooking emerged when I was 10. It was a busy Saturday night, and Angelo's assistant called in sick. The kitchen was falling behind, and I quietly stepped in to help prepare salads. My father found me carefully arranging the delicate greens exactly as I'd seen Angelo do countless times. Instead of sending me back to the office, he stood watching, a look of amazement spreading across his face. "She has the touch, Diana," he told my mother that night. "Just like my father." That moment changed everything. My grandmother started teaching me our family recipes on Sunday afternoons. I'd sit in her tiny kitchen as she showed me how to make perfect gnocchi, the secret to our family's marinara sauce, and the precise technique for rolling cannoli shells. These weren't just cooking lessons. They were the passing of our heritage. "Someday, Rebecca," she would say, her hands dusted with flour, "you will make these even better than I do, and your children will learn from you." While the restaurant was gaining recognition throughout Chicago, becoming known for its perfect balance of tradition and refinement, I was growing up between its walls. By 13, I was helping with prep work after school. At 15, I was working weekends and summers. My friends went to movies and mall trips while I mastered knife skills and learned wine pairings. There were times I resented the sacrifice of a normal teenage life. I missed sleepovers because Saturday mornings meant early produce deliveries. I skipped school dances because Friday nights were our busiest service. But whenever I felt that resentment building, my father would put his arm around my shoulders. "Someday, Rebecca, this will all be yours," he would say, gesturing to the bustling dining room. "Everything we build for you." Those words became my anchor. The long hours and missed social events seemed worth it for the promise of continuing something meaningful. The restaurant wasn't just a business, it was our family's legacy, and I was being prepared to carry it forward. My passion for cooking grew alongside my responsibilities. When it came time for college, there was never any question about my path. I applied to the best culinary schools, and with my practical experience and glowing recommendations from respected Chicago chefs who knew our restaurant, I was accepted to the prestigious Culinary Institute in New York. The night before I left for culinary school, we closed the restaurant for a private family dinner. My father raised his glass in a toast. "To Rebecca," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Who will take Miller's to heights we never imagined?" My mother wiped away tears, nodding in agreement. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." I felt the weight of their expectations, but also the warmth of their pride. That night, my father took me into the kitchen and showed me the brick wall near the back entrance. On it was a small, unobtrusive plaque that read, "Miller's Fine Dining, Est 1992. Robert, Diana, and someday, Rebecca." My name was already there, waiting for me to grow into the role they had planned since my birth. "When you come back from school," my father said, "you'll start at the bottom like I did. Every great restaurateur needs to know every position. But make no mistake, we're preparing you to take over." I hugged him, believing with all my heart that my future was set, clear, and blessed with purpose. I had no idea that 4 years later, that certainty would shatter with a single voicemail. The Culinary Institute was nothing like working in our family restaurant. At home, I was the owner's daughter, given respect partly because of my last name. At school, I was just another student with dreams of culinary greatness. The competition was fierce, with classmates from around the world who had worked in renowned kitchens from Paris to Tokyo. The first month was humbling. My knife skills, which had impressed everyone at Miller's, were merely adequate by institute standards. My plating technique, which had earned compliments from our regular customers, was critiqued as too conservative by instructors who pushed for innovation. But I was determined to prove myself. I stayed after classes to practice, volunteered for every workshop, and studied technique videos until my eyes burned. By the end of the first semester, I had risen to the top of my class. "You have something rare," Chef Laurent, my French cuisine instructor, told me. "You respect tradition, but aren't imprisoned by it." Culinary school opened my world. I learned about molecular gastronomy, fusion techniques that blended cultural influences, sustainable sourcing practices, and modern presentation styles that turned plates into artistic statements. Each new technique and flavor profile excited me, not just for what they were, but for how they could enhance our family restaurant. During my second year, I formed connections with fellow students who would go on to become some of the industry's rising stars. We would gather after classes, experimenting with ingredients and techniques, pushing each other to create dishes that honored tradition while embracing innovation. My roommate Sophia introduced me to her uncle, who owned a Michelin-starred restaurant in Manhattan. Impressed by a dinner we prepared in our tiny apartment, he offered me a coveted internship position. The opportunity was exceptional. Only 2 students from my year were selected. Working at Lumiere changed everything. Chef Marcus Blackwood ran his kitchen like a symphony orchestra, each station perfectly coordinated, every plate a masterpiece of timing and execution. He was demanding but fair, and he noticed my dedication immediately. "Miller," he called to me during my second week. "These scallops, you seared them?" My heart dropped, certain I'd made a mistake. "Yes, chef." He examined the plate, then looked at me with an appraising stare. "Perfect caramelization, consistent. Show Thomas how you did it." That moment of recognition from a chef of his caliber gave me confidence I'd never experienced. Under his mentorship, I learned to trust my instincts while maintaining the precision that fine dining demands. During my internship, I developed a signature dish, a modern take on my grandmother's braised short ribs. I replaced the traditional mashed potatoes with a parsnip puree, added pickled mustard seeds for acidity, and finished with a red wine reduction infused with black garlic. When Chef Marcus put it on the special menu, it sold out 2 nights in a row. "You have a voice," he told me. "Don't let anyone silence it." Throughout my time at school and during my internship, I called home weekly. I shared my experiences and new ideas with my parents, who listened with what I thought was enthusiasm. They would tell me about the restaurant, new regular customers, and how everyone was asking when I would return. "Your father is counting the days," my mother said during one call. "He's already planning which responsibilities to transition to you first." After graduating with honors and completing my internship, I returned to Chicago brimming with ideas and techniques. I envisioned Miller's Fine Dining evolving while maintaining its core identity, like updating a beloved family home with modern conveniences while preserving its character. My homecoming dinner at the restaurant was emotional. The staff welcomed me with cheers, and Angelo insisted I take over his station for the night. My father announced my return to the dining room, and regular customers came to the kitchen to congratulate me. "The prodigal daughter returns," my father said proudly, his arm around my shoulders. "And now, the real education begins." I was eager to implement what I'd learned. In those first weeks, my parents seemed receptive. They allowed me to suggest a few seasonal specials, and customers responded positively. I updated some plating. Presentations and food photography requests from diners increased. I started developing relationships with local farmers for fresher, more sustainable ingredients. But as I pushed for more significant changes, I began noticing resistance. When I suggested updating our reservation system to a modern digital platform, my father insisted our paper book had worked for 20 years. When I proposed a tasting menu featuring modern techniques alongside traditional favorites, my mother worried it would alienate our loyal customers. "We need to trust what works, Rebecca," my father said. "Innovation is fine in small doses, but this restaurant was built on consistency." I tried to find the balance between respecting their caution and implementing necessary updates. They allowed me to revamp our dessert menu and add 2 new signature dishes to the regular offerings. Customers raved about the changes, and food critics took notice. Chicago Magazine mentioned Miller's in an article about traditional restaurants successfully incorporating modern elements. Despite these successes, I remained in an awkward position, neither employee nor decision-maker. I was consulted but rarely given final authority. My parents introduced me to customers as the future of Miller's, but vetoed my suggestions behind closed doors. 6 months after my return, I met Chef Jackson Thompson at a Chicago culinary event. Jackson had worked in restaurants around the Key world before returning to open his own place in Chicago. His restaurant, Ember, had earned a Michelin star within its first year. After tasting my contribution to the event, a deconstructed tiramisu with mascarpone foam and coffee soil, Jackson approached me. "This is brilliant," he said. "The way you've respected the classic flavors while completely reimagining the form. Are you happy at your family's restaurant?" The question caught me off guard. No one had asked about my happiness, only my plans to continue the family legacy. Jackson and I began meeting for coffee to discuss food philosophy and restaurant management. He understood the weight of family expectations. His parents had wanted him to take over their accounting firm, but he had chosen his own path. During one of our meetings, Jackson made an unexpected proposition. "I'm planning a second restaurant," he said. "More casual than Ember, focusing on Italian-American cuisine with modern execution. Exactly what you do so brilliantly. I'd like to discuss a partnership." I was stunned. A partnership would mean creative freedom, respect as an equal, and the chance to build something that reflected my culinary vision. "I'm flattered," I said carefully. "But my family's restaurant—" "Think about it," Jackson interrupted. "You could still be involved with your family's place, but this would be something of your own. Something that grows with you, rather than constraining you." His offer planted a seed of possibility I couldn't ignore. For weeks, I contemplated what a partnership might mean. Could I balance both commitments? Would my parents understand this wasn't abandoning their legacy but expanding my own horizons? Finally, I decided to discuss the opportunity with my parents. I believed they would see this as a chance for me to gain valuable experience that would ultimately benefit Miller's. I scheduled a family dinner at home, away from the restaurant, to present my ideas for evolving our family business alongside this potential new venture. I had no idea that dinner would change everything. I spent days preparing for the family dinner. I created a presentation outlining my vision for Miller's future, updating classic dishes, refreshing the dining room, implementing a modern website with online reservations, and expanding our wine program. Alongside these ideas, I would introduce Jackson's partnership offer as a complementary opportunity, not a competing interest. I arrived early to my parents' home to help cook. The familiar routine of working alongside my mother in the kitchen normally brought comfort, but that evening, an unusual tension hung in the air. "Is everything okay?" I asked as I chopped herbs for the salad. "Just busy at the restaurant," my mother replied, not meeting my eyes. "Your father has some news, too." Before I could probe further, the doorbell rang. To my surprise, my cousin Tyler walked in with my father. Tyler had never shown interest in the restaurant business. 5 years older than me, he had bounced between corporate jobs, never settling into a career. We weren't close, partly due to the age difference and partly because he rarely attended family functions. "Rebecca," Tyler greeted me with exaggerated warmth. "The culinary genius returns." I noticed he carried a portfolio similar to mine. My father beamed at him with pride I'd rarely seen directed at anyone besides me. "Tyler's been helping at the restaurant," my father announced. "He's got a head for business like you wouldn't believe." Throughout dinner, Tyler dominated the conversation with marketing terms and business strategies. My parents nodded appreciatively at everything he said, while my carefully prepared points remained in my folder, waiting for an opening that never seemed to come. Finally, as my mother served coffee, I seized the moment. "I've prepared some ideas for Miller's," I said, opening my presentation. "After seeing what's working at top restaurants across the country, I think we have incredible opportunities to grow while honoring our traditions." My father glanced at my mother, then cleared his throat. "Actually, Rebecca, we've been meaning to talk to you about the future direction of the restaurant." He nodded to Tyler, who slid his portfolio across the table. "We're implementing a new management structure," my father continued. "Tyler will be handling the business operations as general manager. His MBA and corporate experience bring exactly what we need to modernize our business practices." I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath me. "General manager? But we've discussed for years that I would—" "You'll still be involved in the kitchen, of course," my mother interjected quickly. "That's where your talents lie. Tyler will handle the business side. You'll focus on the food. It's the perfect partnership." "Partnership?" I echoed, looking between them. "This is the first I'm hearing about any of this. When was this decided?" "We've been discussing it for months," my father replied. "Tyler approached us with some impressive ideas while you were finishing your internship. He's already implemented a new inventory system that saved us nearly 20% on costs." Tyler smiled sympathetically. "I know this must be a surprise, Rebecca, but this way, you can focus on what you love, cooking, without the headaches of balance sheets and vendor contracts." The realization hit me hard. While I'd been perfecting my craft and developing my culinary voice, they had been grooming someone else for the role I'd been promised my entire life. With shaking hands, I opened my presentation anyway. "I think you should still see my ideas. They address both culinary and business aspects of—" "We've already approved Tyler's strategic plan for the next 3 years," my father interrupted. "Major changes need to wait until we've implemented his systems." I forced myself to stay calm as I outlined my vision for updating our menu while respecting our classics. My mother nodded politely, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. When I suggested renovating the dining room, my father shook his head. Our customers appreciate consistency, Rebecca. They don't want us turning into one of those trendy places that changes every season. But that's not what I'm suggesting, I insisted. I'm talking about subtle updates that honor our history while moving forward. We're losing younger customers to restaurants that offer both tradition and innovation. Tyler cleared his throat. Actually, my market research indicates our core demographic prefers familiar surroundings. Any significant changes could alienate our loyal customer base. What market research? I demanded. I've been talking with our customers tableside for months. Many of them are excited about the new desserts and specials I've introduced. The conversation grew increasingly tense. Every suggestion I made was countered by Tyler's data or my father's resistance to change. It became clear they had made up their minds before I'd even spoken. In desperation, I presented my final idea. What about opening a second location? We could maintain the current Miller's exactly as it is for our loyal customers, while creating a new concept that builds on our legacy but appeals to a broader audience. I've been developing ideas that would... A second location? My father's voice rose. Do you have any idea of the costs involved? The risk? We have a successful restaurant that has supported this family for decades. Why would we gamble that on some trendy concept? It's not trendy, it's evolution, I argued. And yes, I've run the numbers. I've researched locations, developed a business plan. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jackson. I had mentioned our family dinner, and he was calling to see how the discussion had gone. Under normal circumstances, I would have let it go to voicemail, but I was so frustrated that I excused myself to take the call in the kitchen. How's it going? Jackson asked. Not well, I admitted quietly. They've brought my cousin in to run the business side. They're not open to any significant changes. I'm sorry to hear that. Listen, I need to know about our potential partnership soon. I have other candidates interested, but you're my first choice. I understand, I replied. I just need a little more time to sort things out here. I respect your loyalty to your family, Rebecca. But remember, this opportunity won't wait forever. Sometimes you have to choose your own path. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had chilled considerably. My father was staring at his coffee cup, jaw clenched. My mother looked distressed. Tyler was smirking slightly. That was about another opportunity, wasn't it? My father asked coldly. You're planning to compete against your own family. What? No, that's not... We couldn't help overhearing, Tyler interjected. Something about a partnership? A choice to make? I tried to explain about Jackson's offer, how it could be complementary to my role at Miller's, how the experience would ultimately benefit our family business, but they weren't listening. After everything we've sacrificed to give you a secure future, my mother said, her voice trembling. After the education we paid for, the opportunities we've provided. Opportunities? I felt years of frustration boiling over. You've been promising me leadership of this restaurant my entire life, and now you've handed half of it to Tyler without even discussing it with me. You want me in the kitchen, but not in the decisions. You want my culinary skill, but not my business. Input. That's not opportunity, that's limitation. My father stood abruptly. I think we all need to cool down. We'll discuss this tomorrow at the restaurant. 9 o'clock, my office. The evening ended awkwardly. As I gathered my presentation, materials, Tyler approached. No hard feelings, he said quietly. Business is business, nothing personal. But it was personal. It had always been personal. This wasn't just a job. It was my heritage, my future, my identity. I drove home in a daze, replaying the evening. In my mind, had I misunderstood my place all these years? Had the promises been conditional on me never having my own ideas? Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. We need to talk tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late. I set my alarm, determined to approach the morning meeting with composure and clarity. I would find a compromise that respected their concerns while creating space for my professional growth. There had to be a way forward that honored both our family legacy and my individual journey as a chef. I fell into a troubled sleep, unaware that I would never have the chance to present that compromise. I woke to sunlight streaming through my blinds and an uneasy feeling in my stomach. Glancing at my phone, I jolted upright. 10:27 a.m. My alarm had failed to go off, or more likely, I had slept through it after tossing and turning most of the night. There were 7 missed calls from my father, 5 from my mother, and 3 from the restaurant's main line. My heart raced as I immediately called my father back. The call went straight to voicemail. Same with my mother's number. I was scrambling to get dressed when I noticed a voicemail notification. With trembling fingers, I pressed play and put the phone to my ear. My father's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it, filled my ear. "Rebecca, your absence this morning says everything. After discussing your behavior last night, your mother and I have made a decision. You've made it clear that your priorities lie elsewhere, not with the family that has supported you your entire life. You've betrayed our trust with your secret plans. You're out of the family business, effective immediately. Don't bother coming in. Your choice is made, and quite frankly, so is ours." In the background, I could hear my mother crying. I stood frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, unable to process what I'd just heard. There must be some mistake, a miscommunication. They couldn't possibly think I would deliberately miss the meeting. They couldn't possibly believe I would betray them. My hands shaking, I texted back a single word. Understood. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't acceptance. It was acknowledgement while I was too shocked to form a more coherent response. I needed time to breathe, to think, to formulate how to fix this terrible misunderstanding. I tried calling back immediately, but both their phones went to voicemail. I left messages explaining that I had overslept, that we needed to talk, that there was a misunderstanding about Jackson's offer. No response. After an hour of increasingly desperate attempts to reach them, I decided to go to the restaurant in person. Surely, face to face, they would have to listen. They would have to see this reaction was disproportionate to whatever they thought I had done. When I arrived at Miller's, the lunch service was in full swing. I entered through the back as I always had, nodding to dishwashers and prep cooks who looked at me with confusion and discomfort. Something was wrong. They knew something I didn't. I made my way toward my father's office but was intercepted by my Uncle Frank, my father's brother, who occasionally helped with administrative tasks. "Rebecca," he said, his expression grim, "you shouldn't be here." "I need to speak with Dad and Mom," I insisted. "There's been a misunderstanding." "They don't want to see you right now." He placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "It's better if you leave." "Better for whom?" I pulled away from his grasp. "I've worked here my entire life. I'm not leaving until I speak with them." Uncle Frank's expression hardened. "They told me you might come by. They've been clear, Rebecca. You're not welcome here anymore." I looked past him and saw staff members watching our exchange, their faces showing a mix of pity and curiosity. Angelo, who had taught me to make risotto when I was 12, wouldn't meet my eyes. Maria, who had treated me like a daughter for 20 years, turned away when I caught her gaze. Then I saw him, Tyler, standing in the doorway of what had once been my father's office, now apparently his. He didn't approach, just watched with a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice rising. "I've dedicated my life to this restaurant. I've worked every position, learned every recipe. I deserve at least a conversation." "If you don't leave willingly," Uncle Frank said quietly, "I've been instructed to call security." Security? For me? The absurdity of it struck me like a physical blow. "I'm family!" Not in this restaurant. Not anymore. I saw movement at the back entrance and realized he wasn't bluffing. The security guard we hired for weekend nights was approaching, looking uncomfortable, but determined. The humiliation washed over me in a hot wave. Staff members I had grown up with, people who had watched me learn to walk between these tables, were witnessing my expulsion like a common trespasser. Fine, I said, struggling to maintain my dignity. But tell my parents, this isn't over. Tell them they owe me more than a voicemail and a security escort. As I was walked to the door, I caught one last glimpse of Tyler through the office window. He was sitting at my father's desk, phone to his ear, nodding with a satisfied expression. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity. He had orchestrated this. Somehow, he had turned my parents against me. I made it to my car before the tears came, hot and furious. I sat in the parking lot of the restaurant that bore my family name that had been promised to me since childhood, and sobbed until I could barely breathe. When the initial shock subsided, I tried calling my parents again. Voicemail. I texted, "Please, let's talk about this. There's been a misunderstanding. I never intended to betray anyone." No response. By evening, my parents had blocked my number. My emails bounced back undelivered. The family group chat showed I had been removed. It was as if 27 years of being their daughter had been erased in a single day. I called my best friend Alicia, my voice barely coherent through tears. "Can I stay with you for a few days? I can't be alone right now." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "What happened?" I couldn't even articulate it fully. My family, they think I betrayed them. They've cut me off. Everything is falling apart. I packed a small bag, unable to focus on what I might need. My identity had been so entwined with Miller's that without it, I wasn't sure who I was. The chef prodigy? The heir to a culinary legacy? The devoted daughter? All of those roles had been stripped away with a single voicemail. In Alicia's guest room, I fell into a depression deeper than anything I'd experienced before. I barely ate. I couldn't sleep without nightmares. I replayed the dinner conversation, the voicemail, the confrontation at the restaurant, searching for what I could have done differently. The single word I had texted, understood, haunted me. Had they interpreted that as cold acceptance? As confirmation of their accusations? Had that one word been the final nail in the coffin of my family relationship? Days blurred together. Alicia brought me food I couldn't taste. She encouraged me to call other family members, friends, anyone who might serve as an intermediary. But shame kept me isolated. How could I explain that my family had discarded me so easily? That everything I had worked for had vanished overnight? After 2 weeks of this existence, barely living, just surviving, I received a text from an unexpected source, Jackson Thompson. "Haven't heard from you. Getting worried. Let's meet tomorrow, Cafe Luna, 10 a.m. No pressure about the partnership. Just checking in." I almost didn't go. What was the point of discussing professional opportunities when my entire professional identity had been shattered? But Alicia insisted that getting out of the apartment would do me good. "At least hear what he has to say," she urged. "You don't have to decide anything." Little did I know that this meeting would be the first step toward rebuilding not just my career, but my sense of self-worth, a self-worth that existed independently of the family that had defined me for so long. The morning of my meeting with Jackson, I stared at myself in Alicia's bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. I had lost weight, and my chef's whites, which I still habitually wore around the apartment, hung loosely on my frame. I changed into civilian clothes, realizing I hadn't worn anything but chef attire in weeks. Cafe Luna was quiet at mid-morning, just a few remote workers tapping on laptops. Jackson was already there, his expression shifting from professional to concerned when he saw me. "Rebecca," he said, standing to greet me. "I've been worried. You dropped off the radar. It's been a difficult time, I managed, sliding into the booth opposite him. The barista brought over our drinks. Jackson had already ordered my usual latte. The small kindness nearly broke me. I'm guessing things didn't go well with your family, he said gently. I laughed bitterly. You could say that. They've cut me off completely. I'm out of the business, out of the family, just out. His brow furrowed. That seems extreme. What exactly happened? I explained the disastrous dinner, oversleeping the meeting, the voicemail, and my failed attempts to communicate. As I spoke, I noticed Jackson's expression changing from confusion to recognition. This sounds familiar, he said when I finished. Too familiar, actually. What do you mean? Jackson sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. I should have told you this earlier. I knew your father years ago, before you were working in the restaurant full-time. I stared at him, confused. You knew my father? He never mentioned it. He wouldn't, Jackson replied grimly. We were partners, briefly. I was young, ambitious, full of ideas for modernizing traditional Italian cuisine. Sound familiar? My stomach tightened. What happened? We opened a small place together. It was doing well. Great reviews, building a customer base. Then your father got an offer to buy the building where Miller's is now. He wanted to move. Our concept there, make it more upscale. I thought it was too soon, that we should perfect our operation before expanding. We disagreed. Jackson took a sip of his coffee before continuing. One day, I came to work and found the locks changed. Your father had dissolved our partnership, bought me out at the minimum contractual amount. He took our concept, refined it, and opened Miller's Fine Dining. I felt dizzy. That can't be right. My parents built Miller's from scratch. It was their vision, their dream. Their vision built on foundations we created together, Jackson corrected gently. I'm not telling you this to speak ill of your father. I've made peace with it years ago. But his pattern is to control every aspect of his business relationships. When he feels threatened by someone else's input or success, he cuts them out. Like father, like daughter, I murmured, the painful irony washing over me. Not necessarily, Jackson said. You have a choice about what kind of restaurateur, what kind of person you want to be. I sat back, processing this revelation. Do you think Tyler manipulated the situation? It all happened so fast. It's possible. Your cousin seems to have appeared at a convenient time. Have you looked into his background? Why he suddenly became interested in the family business? I hadn't. In my grief, I'd been focused solely on my parents' rejection, not on Tyler's potential motivations. Jackson offered to help me investigate. Through his industry connections, we discovered troubling information. Tyler had left his last 3 jobs under suspicious circumstances. He had significant gambling debts. Most tellingly, he had approached several restaurants with business proposals similar to what he had presented to my parents, only to be turned away after background checks. He needed a way in, I realized. Somewhere his resume wouldn't be scrutinized too closely. Somewhere he'd be trusted automatically. Family businesses are perfect targets, Jackson agreed. Trust is assumed rather than earned. This knowledge shifted something in me. The betrayal still hurt deeply, but understanding the potential, manipulation made it slightly easier to bear. This wasn't just about my ideas versus tradition. It was about Tyler seeing an opportunity and exploiting family dynamics to his advantage. As we were preparing to leave, Jackson hesitated. My offer of partnership still stands. No pressure. Take time to think about it. I looked at him, surprised. Even after all this, you still want to work with me? More than ever, he said sincerely. You're talented, Rebecca. What happened with your family doesn't change that. If anything, it might make you a more thoughtful partner than I initially realized. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of possibility. My culinary passion existed independently of Miller's. My skills were mine, not my family's. I could build something new, something that reflected my values and vision. If we did this, I said carefully, I'd want some conditions. Name them. Complete transparency in all business dealings. Equal say in major decisions. A clear partnership. Agreement in writing. Jackson smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. I learned my lesson with your father. Over the next few days, I considered the opportunity carefully. I spoke with a lawyer to ensure the partnership agreement protected both our interests. I researched Jackson's reputation in the industry, finding consistent praise for his integrity and collaborative approach. 1 week after our coffee meeting, I called Jackson. I'm in. Let's build something together. We found a small location in Wicker Park, a neighborhood with a thriving food scene, but not directly competing with Miller's more traditional downtown clientele. The space needed work, but it had character. Exposed brick walls, large windows, an open kitchen layout that would allow diners to watch the culinary process. I insisted on interviewing every staff member personally, looking not just for skill, but for passion and collaborative spirit. Our head server had worked at a Michelin-starred restaurant in San Francisco. Our pastry chef was a recent culinary school graduate with innovative ideas and impeccable technique. Our sommelier had previously managed wine programs for 2 acclaimed restaurants. Together, we developed a menu that honored traditional Italian-American cuisine while embracing modern techniques and seasonal ingredients. I created a short rib ragu that simmered for 12 hours, then was served over fresh pappardelle with a crispy bone marrow gremolata. A nod to my grandmother's Sunday gravy, but with contemporary elements. When my parents' lawyer sent a cease and desist letter forbidding me from using any Miller's recipes, I spent nights reworking dishes to create versions that honored the spirit of our family traditions while being legally distinct. In many cases, the new versions surpassed the originals. We named the restaurant Radici, meaning roots in Italian. It acknowledged heritage while establishing something new. The logo, a tree with deep roots and spreading branches, captured exactly what we were creating. 2 weeks before our opening, a prominent food critic heard about our concept through industry channels. She requested a preview dinner, and though we were still finalizing menu items, we agreed. Her article appeared in Chicago's most respected food publication the following week. Radici represents the evolution of Italian-American cuisine in Chicago. Chef Rebecca Miller brings the soul and depth of traditional cooking, together with precision technique and thoughtful innovation. Each dish tells a story of heritage reimagined for contemporary palates. The short rib ragu alone is worth the visit. Familiar comfort elevated to fine dining without losing its emotional resonance. This restaurant marks the emergence of an important new culinary voice in our city. The article mentioned my connection to Miller's fine dining, but focused on Radici as its own entity, a new chapter rather than a footnote to my family's story. Reservations began filling immediately, and our soft opening week was fully booked, within days. As opening night approached, I found myself thinking less about what I had lost and more about what I was creating. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined me. I was building something that reflected my values, a restaurant where creativity was encouraged, where staff were treated as collaborators rather than subordinates, where tradition was respected but not worshipped. On the morning of our opening, I arrived at Radici before dawn. Standing in the empty restaurant, watching sunrise light filter through the windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before that fateful voicemail, hope. Radici's opening night exceeded all expectations. Every table was filled, with a waiting list forming by 7 o'clock. The kitchen operated with the synchronicity that comes from weeks of preparation and a shared vision. Dishes returned to the yabai kitchen empty, with servers reporting enthusiastic praise from diners. Jackson worked the front of house, greeting guests and explaining our concept. I alternated between expediting in the kitchen and visiting tables to gauge reactions firsthand. When I appeared in the dining room, conversations would pause, and guests would ask about specific dishes or techniques. No one treated me as the chef who left Miller's. Here, I was simply Chef Rebecca, creator of Radiki. By midnight, when the last guests departed, the entire staff gathered for a celebratory toast. Jackson raised his glass. To roots that nourish and branches that reach toward the future. To Radiki and to Rebecca, whose vision made this possible. The weeks that followed maintained that momentum. Chicago's food media embraced us, with reviews highlighting our balance of tradition and innovation. One critic wrote, "Miller has achieved what many chefs attempt but few accomplish, honoring culinary heritage while moving it forward in meaningful ways." Our reservation list extended to 3 months out. We added lunch service to accommodate demand. Industry peers began visiting, curious about the restaurant generating so much buzz. Most gratifying were the customers who came after dining at Miller's, who sought me out to say they preferred our interpretations of classic dishes. Some were longtime Miller's regulars who remembered me from childhood and wanted to support my new venture. Their loyalty touched me deeply. Financial success followed critical acclaim. We reached profitability in our 4th month. Unheard of in an industry where most new restaurants operate at a loss for at least a year. Jackson and I reinvested every dollar, improving equipment, expanding our wine program, and ensuring our staff were compensated above industry standards. My personal transformation paralleled Radici's success. I moved from Alicia's guest room to my own apartment above the restaurant. I began mentoring young chefs, remembering how valuable Chef Marcus's guidance had been to me. I developed relationships with local farmers, creating a supply chain that supported sustainable agriculture while ensuring the highest quality ingredients. Through it all, I heard nothing from my family. Occasionally, staff would mention that someone from Miller's had dined with us anonymously, but my parents never reached out. I learned through industry gossip that Miller's was maintaining its customer base, but not growing, a dangerous position in Chicago's competitive restaurant scene. 8 months after Radici's opening, we received a James Beard Rising Star Chef nomination. The announcement generated a new wave of media attention, with several publications running profiles that contrasted my approach with my family's more traditional establishment. One particularly prominent article included quotes from former Miller's employees praising my leadership and innovation. The piece also mentioned rumors of financial difficulties at Miller's, suggesting that Tyler's management was proving less effective than anticipated. The morning after that article appeared, I was in the kitchen testing a new dish when our host approached nervously. "Chef, your mother is here. She's asking to speak with you." I nearly dropped the spoon I was holding. "My mother, are you sure?" "Yes, chef. She said to tell you it's urgent." I removed my apron, smoothed my chef's coat, and took a deep breath. "Seat her in the private dining room. Tell her I'll be there in 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes were necessary to compose myself. I hadn't seen my mother in nearly a year. What could be so urgent that she would come to my restaurant after months of silence? When I entered the private dining room, my mother stood gazing at the wall of preservation jars, tomatoes, pickled vegetables, and fruit conserves we prepared seasonally. She turned at the sound of the door, and I was struck by how much she had aged. New lines creased her face, and her posture seemed diminished. "Rebecca," she said softly. "Mother." I kept my voice neutral. "This is unexpected." "Your restaurant is beautiful." She gestured around. "So much light, so different from Miller's." "Thank you. Would you like to sit? Can I offer you coffee or tea?" We sat across from each other, the tension almost tangible. My mother twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood discussions about report cards or curfew violations. "I saw the article," she finally said. "The James Beard nomination. Your father and we're proud of you." The words should have warmed me, but they rang hollow after months of silence. Is that why you're here? To congratulate me? She shook her head, tears forming. No. Though we are proud, I'm here because we need your help. I waited, saying nothing. Tyler has been embezzling from the restaurant, she said, her voice breaking. We discovered it last week. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past year. He's disappeared. I felt no satisfaction at this confirmation of Tyler's character, only sadness for my parents' betrayal. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Have you contacted the police? Yes, but the damage is done. Our reputation. Suppliers are demanding payment up front now. Staff are leaving. Reservations are down nearly 40%. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. We need you to come back, Rebecca, to help save Miller's. I sat back, processing her request. After everything that had happened, the accusations, the voicemail, the complete cutting of ties, they wanted me to return and rescue them. You cut me out, I said quietly. You believed Tyler over me. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. We were wrong. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Your father's pride, my fear of change. We made a terrible mistake. But Miller's is still your heritage, still your legacy. I looked around at Radici, my restaurant, built from my vision, thriving under my leadership. This is my legacy now, Mother. I built this when you and Father took everything else away. Please, Rebecca. If not for us, then for your grandfather's memory. For all the years you poured into Miller's. Don't let it disappear because of our mistake. The lunch service would begin soon. I could hear staff preparing the dining room, the familiar rhythm of a restaurant coming to life. My restaurant. I can't simply abandon Radici to return to Miller's, I said finally. But I might be able to offer limited consulting to help you stabilize the situation. Relief washed over her face. You would do that? After everything? Not for you or Father, I said honestly. For the staff who depend on Miller's for their livelihoods. For Angelo, who taught me to make risotto. For Maria, who folded napkin swans with me. My mother reached across the table to take my hand, but I gently withdrew it. This doesn't fix what happened, I continued. You believed the worst of me without even hearing my side. You discarded me like I meant nothing. We were wrong, she repeated, her voice small. Your father? He was afraid. Of losing control. Of being replaced. Tyler played on those fears. And you? What was your excuse? She looked down. I've never stood against your father's decisions. Not once in 30 years of marriage. It's my greatest failing. The honesty of her admission surprised me. I'll need to discuss this with Jackson. We'll establish clear parameters for any assistance I provide. And I'll need a direct apology from Father. He's too proud to come here, she admitted. But he knows he was wrong. Then his pride will have to bend. I won't set foot in Miller's until he acknowledges what he did. As my mother was leaving, she paused at the door. That word you texted, understood. It felt so cold, so final. Like you were confirming everything Tyler had suggested about your intentions. I hadn't considered how that single word might have been interpreted. I was in shock. I had just heard the voicemail. Understood meant I received the message, not that I agreed with it. Such a small thing, she murmured. One word that helped destroy everything. After she left, I sat alone in the private dining room, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to refuse any help, to let them experience the consequences of their actions. Another part recognized that Miller's was still home to people I cared about, people who had nurtured my culinary journey. When I discussed the situation with Jackson later that day, he listened without judgment. What do you want to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to help save Miller's. Another part feels that rebuilding that relationship would diminish what happened, make it too easy for them. Those feelings can coexist, he said wisely. You can offer professional assistance while maintaining personal boundaries. You can help save Millers without returning to the daughter role they want you to play. His perspective helped clarify my thinking. I would offer limited consulting to help Millers recover from Tyler's damage, but I would do so as Chef Rebecca of Radici, not as the daughter desperate for approval. I would maintain the boundaries I had established in my new life while extending professional courtesy to the establishment that had shaped my culinary foundations. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a first step toward a new kind of relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than obligation and expectation. 6 months passed, and Radici continued to flourish. We received our first Michelin star, an achievement that validated our approach to honoring tradition while embracing innovation. We expanded our private dining options and launched a popular cooking class series where I shared techniques from both classical and modern cuisines. During this time, I provided limited consulting to Millers as promised. I reviewed their financial systems, recommended a new management structure, and helped them rebuild relationships with vendors damaged by Tyler's actions. I never stayed long, never dined there, and always maintained professional distance. My father avoided these sessions at first, scheduling conflicting appointments or remaining in his office with the door closed. But as Millers slowly stabilized under my guidance, his resistance softened. One afternoon, he appeared in the doorway while I was reviewing inventory procedures with their new manager. "Could I speak with you when you're finished?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. In his office, the same office where Tyler had smirked at me from behind the desk, my father seemed diminished. The commanding presence that had dominated my childhood was muted, humbled by recent events. "Your mother tells me the new system is working well," he began awkwardly. "It is. Margins are improving. Staff turnover has decreased." He nodded, avoiding my gaze. "Your restaurant, Radici. I dined there last week, anonymously. This surprised me. What did you think?" "It was excellent," he admitted. "Your short rib ragu. It honors your grandmother while being entirely your own creation." Coming from him, this was extraordinary praise. I waited, sensing he had more to say. "I was wrong, Rebecca." The words seemed physically painful for him to speak. "About you, about Tyler, about everything." I remained silent, allowing him the space to continue. "I was afraid," he confessed, "afraid of becoming irrelevant. When you returned from culinary school with all your new ideas, your connections, your talent, I saw myself becoming obsolete. Then Tyler appeared with his MBA terminology and business plans that made me feel important again." "You were never irrelevant," I said quietly. "I wanted to build on your legacy, not replace it." "I see that now." He finally met my eyes. "That voicemail, I've replayed it in my mind 1,000 times. The things I said to my own daughter. I can never take those words back." "No, you can't," I agreed. "But we can move forward differently." This conversation marked the beginning of a gradual healing process. My parents and I began meeting monthly for coffee at neutral locations. Never Millers, never Radici. We started with safe topics: industry news, shared acquaintances, culinary, trends. Slowly, we progressed to more personal subjects. I learned that my mother had started therapy to address her pattern of deferring to my father's decisions. My father had joined a business mentorship program where he was, for once, the student rather than the authority. They were making efforts to change patterns established over decades of marriage and business partnership. As for Tyler, he had fled to Mexico, but was eventually extradited to face charges. The legal proceedings revealed the extent of his manipulation. He had intercepted communications between Jackson and me, presented my ideas as threats rather than opportunities, and systematically turned my parents against me while embezzling from the restaurant. Understanding the deliberate nature of his manipulation helped explain the suddenness and severity of my parents' reaction, though it didn't fully excuse it. Jackson remained a steadfast partner and friend throughout this period of reconciliation. He respected my need to process these family dynamics while ensuring Radishi continued to thrive. Our partnership strengthened as we navigated the challenges of a growing restaurant, now planning our second location. Ironically, the very expansion I had proposed for Miller's. 1 year after my mother's unexpected visit to Radici, I invited my parents to dinner at my restaurant. It would be the first time we dined together publicly since the fallout. I seated them at the chef's table with a view of the kitchen, where they could watch me in my element. Throughout the meal, I sent special dishes not on the regular menu, reinterpreted versions of our family recipes, transformed through my culinary lens, but recognizable in their essence. With each course, I visited their table briefly to explain the inspiration and technique. After dessert, a modern take on my grandmother's ricotta cake, I joined them with a glass of Amaro. "This evening has been a gift," my mother said, taking my hand. "Seeing you in your restaurant, watching how your staff respects you, tasting your food. I'm so proud of the chef and woman you've become." My father, never comfortable with emotional moments, cleared his throat. "The business you've built here, it's impressive. Not just the food, but the culture. It's something I never quite managed at Miller's." "Perhaps we could learn from each other," I suggested. Miller's tradition and stability, Radishi's innovation and adaptability. "I'd like that," he said, the closest he would come to acknowledging he still had things to learn. As they prepared to leave, my father hesitated. "That text you sent. Understood. We thought it meant you were dismissing us, that you didn't care." "I cared too much," I corrected gently. I was in shock. I couldn't form any other words. "One misinterpreted word," he mused, "and a father too proud to ask for clarification." In the year that followed, our family relationship evolved into something new, not the embedded hierarchy of my childhood, but a more balanced connection between adult professionals who shared bloodlines and culinary passion. Miller's stabilized under joint management from my parents and a professional team I helped select. Radici expanded to a second location, and I began writing a cookbook sharing both traditional techniques and modern interpretations of Italian-American cuisine. The journey from devastation to rebuilding taught me lessons I share with the young chefs I now mentor. Family business dynamics are complex emotional landscapes where professional disagreements can trigger deep personal wounds. Clear communication and established boundaries are essential, especially when love and legacy are entwined with business decisions. Our identities cannot be solely defined by family expectations or professional roles. True fulfillment comes from honoring tradition, while having the courage to create something uniquely yours. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to discovering what you truly need. The voicemail that seemed to destroy my future actually liberated me to create a more authentic path. The most important ingredient in any recipe for success is believing in your own vision, even when those closest to you don't see it yet. Your culinary voice is valid. Your professional instincts matter. Your unique perspective is valuable. And perhaps most importantly, boundaries are not rejections. They're the framework that allows authentic relationships to flourish. By establishing clear boundaries with my family, I created space for genuine reconciliation rather than forced forgiveness. Today, I run Radici with pride and purpose, mentor emerging culinary talents, and maintain a healthier relationship with my parents. The family business continues, though not in the way any of us envisioned. Miller's and Radici exist as separate establishments connected by shared heritage, but distinct in execution, much like my parents and I have become connected but independent forces in each other's lives. That devastating voicemail and my one-word response, understood, initially shattered my world. But from those fragments, I built something stronger, truer, and ultimately more satisfying than the future that had been prescribed for me. Have you ever had a family misunderstanding that led to major changes in your life? Or have you had to create professional boundaries with family members? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more journeys of resilience and growth. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings. Thank you for listening to my story.